Imagine a founder who sits on national television, confidently lecturing aspiring entrepreneurs on how to run a business. Now imagine that same founder's 3,000 crore company quietly hemorrhaging employees, while its highly anticipated public offering repeatedly stalls out. This is the paradox of boAt. In less than a decade, the brand scaled from an initial investment of just 3 lakh rupees into an operation generating over 3,000 crore in annual revenue, reaching a valuation of $1.3 billion. This growth coincided perfectly with the 2016 launch of Reliance Jio. As free mobile data flooded the country, millions of Indians bought their first smartphones, and they all needed affordable earphones and chargers to go with them. boAt captured this demographic by flooding the market with accessories right as the demand peaked, effectively harvesting a massive, newly connected audience before any legacy brands could react. They established their footing by solving an incredibly visible problem. Apple's original charging cables frayed and broke constantly. boAt released a braided, highly durable alternative that survived extreme bending, instantly proving their reliability to consumers. But you can't build a billion-dollar valuation on charging cables alone. To scale up, the founders made a deliberate pivot. They decided to stop positioning themselves as a traditional electronics company and started selling a lifestyle instead. They completely bypassed traditional tech advertising. By signing rising young cricketers like Hardik Pandya and KL Rahul, boAt cultivated an energetic, cult-like community of fans who proudly called themselves boheads. Next, they brought in Bollywood stars like Jacqueline Fernandez and even paraded their headphones down the runway at Fashion Week. They took budget audio gear and wrapped it in the glamorous packaging of high fashion. This marketing execution created a halo around the brand that was so bright, millions of buyers never stopped to ask where these stylish gadgets were actually coming from. boAt scaled its catalog through white labeling, a process where a company buys pre-designed products from Chinese factories and stamps its own logo on them for local sale. This reliance on generic hardware backfired when boAt entered the smartwatch market. While competitors were actively writing their own operating systems and integrating advanced health sensors, boAt was still offering basic, rebranded pedometers with minimal software integration. This chart shows smartwatch market share. Competitors Noise and Firebolt climb steadily past 25%, while boAt's share drops sharply to 14.1%. This translates to a revenue collapse, plummeting from 910 crore in 2023 to 330 crore by 2025. White labeling is an effective tactic for entering a new category quickly. But when a market matures and consumers demand real differentiation, relying entirely on another factory's blueprints becomes a fatal weakness. At the same time, the brand's public narrative began contradicting its internal operations. boAt leaned heavily into the Make in India initiative to drive sales, yet trade records revealed that up to 95% of the raw materials for their manufacturing joint venture were still being imported from China and Taiwan. Then, the back-end infrastructure gave way. The personal data of over 7.5 million Indian customers, including customer names, their phone numbers, and physical addresses, was breached by a hacker and uploaded to the dark web. The most jarring detail of the breach was the price. That database of 7.5 million users was sold online for exactly 216 rupees. Prioritizing hypergrowth and marketing over corporate governance and data security transforms a brand into a liability for the customers who trusted it. By 2025, after consecutive years of deep financial losses, boAt reported a 60 crore profit. They didn't achieve this by moving more inventory. In fact, their overall sales volume dropped. They generated this profit by slashing operational expenses and warehouse costs to the bone. But cutting costs couldn't cover up the accounting discrepancies. Company auditors noted that the financial figures boAt submitted to banks did not match the company's internal ledgers for 3 consecutive years, and they flagged that short-term funds were being diverted for long-term purposes. Then the final shoe dropped. Exactly 29 days before filing the critical document required to launch their IPO, founders Aman Gupta and Samir Mehta suddenly resigned from their roles as Chief Marketing Officer and CEO, stepping away from the daily operations. Aman Gupta, however, was already looking elsewhere. He had spent the last few years diversifying his personal risk. investing in over 140 different startups through his television appearances, and securing a 100 crore funding round for an entirely new artificial intelligence venture. The stakes here are heavily skewed. Retail investors are being invited to buy into a company plagued by shrinking market share, data leaks, and auditor warnings, while the very architects of that company have already constructed their personal financial lifeboats. Despite these existential threats, boAt is not dead. They still command a significant share of the Indian audio and wearable markets. If they choose to pivot away from white labeling and finally invest serious capital into genuine research and development, they have the reach to stabilize the ship. Brilliant marketing and celebrity endorsements can convince millions to buy a product once, but only undeniable product quality will convince them to stay.